Hello everyone, so chapter 13 just dropped on JP with a new banner, of course, and this update is pretty light overall. It's just the banner and the main story update with, the recipes. So we got Linka and Yuna, alternate versions for them. We actually didn't get any new characters this time. There is a new character in the story chapter at least, but no new characters on the banner, so I know a lot of people have kind of been like, when are they going to add so-and-so character and whatever? Like a lot of the protagonists from Iris are missing, Lulu is missing, some popular side characters and whatever. And for a while, they've been doing like 2-3 new characters per month. However, last month, there was only one new character in Lanza, and so far this month, the main story chapter doesn't have a new character, so they might be toning down on new characters. I'm not sure. I hope not, and we'll see next banner, I guess. But yeah, I hope they're not, toning down on the new characters because I would like to see more new characters. However, these two are still awesome. New Linka, which she was a 1-star before, so it's cool that she finally got a 3-star. And new Yuna as well. So she was, other than Roman, she was the only main story character not have multiple versions. Actually, wait, no. Izana doesn't either yet. Actually, that's really surprising. Yuna got an alt before Izana, which is pretty funny. Hopefully that means we're getting an Izana soon, but we'll see. And of course for Heidi and Block, we still only have Rose. But anyways, but yeah, Yuna being the first one other than Val and Resna is kind of weird. But anyways, they're both super awesome. Linka's actually the first fire unit we have in a long time. We haven't had a fire unit since Shalistera, so that was like 4 months ago. Yeah, so fire is finally going to start getting new units, I assume, because it's summer. But yeah, there's not much to talk about here other than the new characters and the recipes as well. Also, for those of you who've been waiting, my video on budget setups for the Chapter 8 score battles for Global should be coming out tomorrow. I've made a lot of progress on it. It's just hard. Those battles are really hard without Bolt Resna or Izana, but I'm doing my best. I'll post that hopefully tomorrow, maybe the day after at the latest, so look forward to that. Anyways, let's get to the units. So we have a Memoria, and we have Linka, and we have Yuna. So the Memoria is interesting. I don't think it's very good. It's meant for use on Yuna. Basically, when receiving an attack, gain 18% skill damage, permanent buff for the rest of the battle. It stacks up to 72%, so 4 times. 72% is pretty high. Most Memoria, I believe, go up to either 52% or 54% skill damage. I think 52%. And it is generic, which is cool. Like 72% isn't bad at all. However, it does require getting hit. For most attackers, you're not really going to be getting hit. The ramp's going to be kind of slow. And it doesn't scale with buff effect at all once you're at the cap, because it is capped. Caps don't scale with buff effect. So like normal damage Memoria will scale with something like damage buff A or received buff effect or whatever. This won't, so it ends up evening out or being a bit worse in high-end setups than other damage Memoria, but it is nice that it's generic. It's just awkward to use. It's meant for Yuna because she does take attacks, and characters like Lanza do as well, but it also has a bad stat line with lower phys attack and some defensive stats. Like its stat line is okay for the characters it's intended for, but it's not really worth rolling for, unlike some of the crit damage Memoria or some of the supported Memoria that are in the pool. It's just kind of like, it's not quite good enough, but it is okay. And it's like, it's decent at level 1. I think it's 8%, but it still has the ramp. It's like, whatever. But it's okay. It's nice that it's generic. That's basically what I can say about it, but I don't think it's better than any of the other attacker Memoria that are also generic, so Anyways, Yuna. So Yuna is a strike attacker, and she has a bit of an interesting kit where her entire kit is kind of based around her passive and maintaining her passive. So her passive is at the start of the battle, gain 2 stacks of this buff, right? So she gains a buff, something Knight of the White, something, I don't know. She gains a buff. I don't know what it's called. And for each stack of the buff, she gains cover, and which means she will intercept attacks, and she gets 40% reduced damage received, reduced damage taken, and she gets 40% skill damage. So these are pretty good stats, like defensively, and the cover is kind of nice. You would basically be using her in place of a defender, because she does tank hits like that. And she gets some damage from it, and this 40% damage reduction that she gets right away without ramping is actually really competitive and really strong. Now, the one thing I don't know about these, I can't confirm it because I don't have her, is whether or not this scales with buff effect. Because of the way this buff works, it like gives her this buff, and then these are effects of this buff. They're not like separate buffs themselves. If these scale with buff effect, it should be pretty dang strong. As it is, it's still like very decent. So yeah, I'm not completely sure. But basically, she gets 2 stacks of this at the start of the battle, and then you can get stacks through her burst, which gives 2 more stacks, or will reapply it. And her skill 2 will give you 1 stack on killing an enemy. So other than that, their damage is pretty whatever. It's mostly about this passive. Like, damage rate on this is a low 290, with 30% damage against weakness, and damage rate on the burst is pretty normal with a 50% damage against weakness, which is a bit low for burst damage. Nowadays, you kind of want bursts to be 100% increased damage. But you do still get, of course, the skill damage from here, and every time she's hit as well, she gets a stacking 5% Fizz attack up to 25%. So her damage is on the low side overall, but she does have this really solid defense and this cover to maybe take the place of a defender. So it's kind of interesting. I think there may be some combos with, say, like Academy Rorona. Academy Rorona can give her burst, so like you skill 1 with her, then Academy Rorona gives her a burst panel guaranteed on her next turn. So you're guaranteed to have stacks of this, stacks of the passive after bursting, because you really do want to maintain her passive. If you're not maintaining her passive, then she's a bit weak, right? She's taking too much damage, she's not covering. I think there is definitely potential for her to be a really strong tank despite being an attacker and having good damage on top. It'll just require playing with her a bit to sort of see how that works out, whether it's too clunky or not. However, a big problem, there's kind of 2 problems, right? She covers instead of counters, so unlike Patty or whatever, she's not intercepting and doing damage. Which is kind of what you would want on an attacker. You want them to do damage as well, since ideally you're building them for damage. And then also, most battles are kind of over too quickly for this level of defense to matter a lot of the time. Like nowadays, we have enough damage scaling that you basically throw your items on your attacker's first turn and wipe the entire field with AoE. However, she still will be quite solid in dungeons, probably. I don't know. It remains to be seen. The 40% reduced damage taken at the start of the fight without having any ramp is really, really good. Like Patty and Totori can also get up to those numbers, but they require a ramp, right? So they're taking decently high damage at the start of the fight. Of course, she doesn't have a defender stat line, so she's a bit squishy, but you know, like maybe she can be really good defensively. It just requires playing with her to see. Her damage is quite weak though. Her damage is not very strong. This is like, if you're hitting the weakness, this is like 380% damage rate, which is okay if you meet the condition, but it's not amazing when characters like Ryza have 450% or whatever, without any other effect. Like, you get the passive if it kills something, but you really need it to be doing high damage to kill something, and the burst also is fairly weak. But the 40% skill damage here does help offset that. It's just skill damage is decently saturated, so it's not as big of a buff as it seems. So she seems alright, but I don't think I would put her in S tier. I probably wouldn't even put her in A tier. It remains to be seen how strong she is defensively. And then next up we have Linca. And Linca, like I mentioned before, our first fire unit in a long time. She is a fire breaker, and she has a gimmick based around burn, where her passive is whenever she breaks an enemy, inflict burn 3 times. So 3 stacks of burn. And for those of you who may not be familiar with burn, burn is an ailment that does 1% max HP damage every turn. So whenever the enemy takes a turn, they'll take 3% damage because 3 stacks. And it is permanent, it doesn't fall off. So it has no duration, it's just on the enemy for the rest of the battle. So that's kind of cool, but 3% damage isn't super relevant. And one major problem is that a lot of enemies are immune to all ailments. That might be changing nowadays. They might be doing higher resistance instead of immunity. The big thing about immunity is immunity cannot be lowered. If an enemy is immunity, you can't lower that. Is immune, you can't lower that resistance. They are just immune. So you cannot inflict the ailment. And when you have a kit based around inflicting an ailment, yeah, that's a little awkward. It kind of hurts the kit a little bit, right? But her skills are based around burn. Her skill 1 gives the enemy minus 100% burn resistance and increases Linka's own stun damage. This is kind of awkward because you need to stun the enemy to apply the burn. However, I'm pretty sure this debuff will fall off. Oh wait, no, this is for turns, not attacks. Okay, yeah. This debuff won't fall off then. That's good. I had to make sure. Yeah, this won't fall off. That's fine. So you can combo like her skill 1 into her skill 2 to make sure that they get burned so they have lower burn resistance. And this also increases her stun damage to help that because they only get burned when you stun them. And then her skill 2, single target stun, has a pretty standard breaker utility nowadays. When she stuns an enemy, they take 30% increased magic damage for the next 2 attacks. This is pretty normal on breakers. Totri has this, Valentine's Eska has this, Gyara Ryza has this. Like, this is pretty standard for breakers nowadays. You really want to be building them kind of with, you know, the physical magical resistance down trait along with the stun trait that goes with them. So, but unlike Valentine's Eska, this one is only 30%. You can't get up to 60% because instead she has burn resistance for the attacking part of it, and then the magic damage taken for the stun part of it. So it's a bit weaker, but it is magic at least. We didn't have a magic version of this kit outside of Ryza, who is an AoE breaker. So this is okay. And then her burst is the same thing when stunning, 50% magic attack to the highest magic attack on your team. So very similar to Valentine's Eska, except for magic. And she has this burn gimmick instead of just being a better unit. Like, she has this lowering burn resistance instead of making the enemy take increased damage again. So she's not like super strong. Burn is kind of whatever. There are obviously synergies with burn. Like, if you have a lot of stacks of the flock memoria from the standard pool, it's an SSR memoria that if an enemy is burned, it inflicts increased damage taken on them. It's pretty good in combo with Linka's kit if you're actually burning enemies. And 50% magic attack is a really huge buff, so like, this is a really, really solid burst. It's just like not amazing or anything. And her leader skill is also a bit interesting. It's a generic leader skill, so it applies to all allies. It gives them 100% burn resistance, and when attacking a burned target, they get 50% skill damage. Usually leader skills only affect certain characters. So having one that affects the entire party and gives a number this high, 50% skill damage, is pretty decent. It does have the burn conditional on it, which is kind of frustrating if the enemy's immune to burn, but this is actually, I believe, the strongest generic leader skill in the game, because usually a leader skill that applies to everyone is going to be like 10% skill damage. So very interesting leader skill here. If you're using her, it's definitely not a bad leader skill at all. Applying to everyone is really nice. But a lot of the good attackers have leader skills that apply to themselves anyways, so it's not necessarily going to be that useful. And of course, she also has a magic stun gift, so she links to Stera, so she can make her own gear, which is very nice. We're kind of lacking magic stun gifts for a long time. You might have noticed on Global, we didn't really have any until we got Logi, and now we have Linka as well, so that's kind of neat. But yeah, overall, she's a single target breaker that increases magic damage taken and has some weird burn gimmick. I think she's kind of mediocre. I don't think she'll end up being super powerful, but she's cool, and she's finally a single target firebreaker, so if you somehow haven't done Fire Tower yet on JP, you know, if you get her, she'll definitely help with that quite a bit. I guess I will just go through the recipes now. The recipes this chapter are interesting. Obviously, we have a lot of recipes for Linca and Juna, and they're okay. Like Yuna's recipes, strike characters attacking weakness, 70% skill damage, 95 attack weapon. This is not bad. I think there's better strike weapons, but it's not bad. You know, strike character when receiving an attack, gain 11% physical attack for 1 turn. You can't stack this buff. I thought originally you could stack it, then I read that it can't be stacked. So it's 11% physical attack for Yuna. It's not a bad armor at all, but it's just okay. It's not going to like break her or anything. And then, you know, some HP recovery as well for her. So, and then the linka gear is, you know, when attacking, lower fire resistance, which is pretty nice. And also, crap, I don't actually know what this one is. This is like I believe this is status effect application rate or something like that. So pretty mediocre. You'd rather have some better break gear. And then of course, the ring is a good firebreaker item. It's good stats, 10 speed, and for firebreakers, single target break damage plus 18%, so quite good for her as well. But the really interesting thing about these recipes aren't the recipes for Yuna and Linka, and it's actually the usable items. They have started creeping the base usable items. So the first one we have here is this fire ointment, and it's, you know, ally with the highest magic attack, for 50% fire skill damage for 2 turns, and it has 2 uses. So we have a version of this that's 40% skill damage instead, and now we have one that's 50%. So they're starting to creep usable items a little bit, which is nice. Hopefully we get some better debuff items soon, because the current ones feel kind of bad to use and make. And the extra recipes as well, we have this, which is pretty interesting. This is a weapon with mixed physical and magical attack stats, and its effect is at the start of the wave, gain a buff, which is 100% crit rate for 1 turn. So the first attack is guaranteed to be a crit, which is really nice for a lot of like auto setups or certain Roman tournament things where you might not be able to get the crit rate. It's pretty interesting. However, it does have a strong downside where for the rest of the battle, that character can't be healed. So kind of weird. I think it will definitely see some use in a lot of cases, just because if you're one-shotting the fight with that crit, it's the downside doesn't really matter, right? However, you do have the opportunity cost of not having a better weapon. A lot of times you can just get crit from your item. We have an item that gives a crit panel, which is guaranteed crit, and a lot of the strong characters have guaranteed crit anyways. We also have characters like Logi and Verona that can guarantee crits, so it's interesting. It's definitely usable. We'll probably see some use, and it's nice to have this tool in our arsenal. This is the first equipment item that actually affects crit rate at all, so that's really nice. Then we also have this one, which is kind of funny. It's an accessory that gives you 12% chance to dodge counters. I would have preferred this to be guaranteed dodge for the first counter in a battle or something, because re-rolling for this 12% dodge is kind of annoying, but it is some, you know, anti-counter itemization, which is kind of cool. We don't have that yet, so that's nice. We have more options than just say like Regina or covers or whatever, so kind of interesting item here. And then we also have these 2 battle items or debuff items. This one is AoE poison, so this will inflict poison on all enemies. If you've done Affinity Tower, you might be aware of how strong that is for certain floors where enemies are required to be poisoned. So most people that are, you know, serious about the game on JP have cleared all Affinity Tower at this point, because it's, much easier now than it is on global, just with a lot of the tools that we have. But this definitely helps for those poison floors. And then we also have the same thing, but for paralysis, which will help for those paralysis floors. And those are the trickier ones. They're trickier than the poison ones for sure. So this is pretty cool. So yeah, if you still haven't done Affinity Tower on JP because of paralysis or poison, these items will make them an absolute breeze. That's basically all they're really good for, right? In general, so yep. Anyways, that is all the recipes. It's pretty cool. I think we're going to start getting some very cool, much better debuff items soon, hopefully. That's kind of what it looks like. So very, very excited for that. And yeah, let's just go ahead and do our ticket pulls. I'm definitely doing tickets on every banner in JP now, especially because with this banner, we have Flock and Roseval in the pool now. I want both of these units quite a bit. I don't have any of them. The only Rose unit I have is Sue, so any of the Rose units would be super nice. Other than that, not really looking for anything else other than maybe Umpel, but the chances to get those units make tickets always worth it to me, so let's go ahead and hope for some good luck. Yeah, not looking good. We got Oscar. That's not really much, but maybe there's a fake out or something. It's probably just a bunch of SRs. It's been a little while for me since I've gotten a banner unit at this point, so I think I'm a little overdue for one, but probably not gonna see anything here. Yeah. But maybe the second set. Alright. We are, yeah, we're dead. That's unfortunate. My luck on pulls on JP has been pretty abysmal for a while. The last new unit I got was mid-April, and I even did like 120 pulls on the Claudia banner or something. Ended up having to spark her, so. Yeah, we're not having a good time on this account recently, but hopefully that'll fix itself soon. Completely out of gems though. Anyways, that'll be it for this one. Yeah, I have a lot of videos I need to get out this week. Hopefully I can get those out for you all. For all of you global players, and I will see you all in the next one. All right, bye-bye.